the Lanternmaker's daughter. In the village of Emberwick, nestled between jagged mountains and an endless forest, there lived a lanternmaker named Elias, who was known far and wide for his craft. His lanterns were no ordinary lights. They glowed with hues that danced like fireflies and cast shadows that seemed alive. People came from distant lands to buy them, claiming they brought warmth to cold nights and chased away even the darkest fears. But what most people didn't know was that Elias had a secret. He wasn't just making lanterns. He was trapping pieces of the stars themselves within their glass frames. Every night, when the sky shimmered with constellations, Elias would climb to the highest peak near Emberwick, whisper ancient words taught to him by his late wife, and capture fragments of starlight in small vials. He then infused these into his creations, giving them their magical glow. Elias had one daughter, Lila, who adored watching her father work. She loved how the light played across his face as he bent over his tools, shaping metal and glass into intricate designs. But she also noticed something troubling. Her father grew weaker with each passing year. His hands trembled more often, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. Yet whenever she asked about it, he simply smiled and said, "It's the price we pay for beauty." Lila was curious by nature, always asking questions and seeking answers. Her mother had died when she was very young, leaving behind only stories Elias told on quiet evenings. According to him, her mother, Mira, had been a dreamer, someone who believed in magic long before Elias ever discovered his own abilities. It was Mira who first showed him how to capture starlight, teaching him the incantation that allowed him to harness its power. After her death, Elias continued the practice not only out of necessity, but as a way to keep her memory alive. One evening, as autumn painted the trees in fiery reds and golds, Lila decided to follow her father on one of his nightly expeditions. She wrapped herself in a thick cloak and crept out of the house after he left, careful not to wake the sleeping villagers. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and frost, and the moon hung low in the sky, casting silvery beams through the trees. She found him atop the rocky summit, standing alone beneath a sea of stars. In his hand, he held a delicate vial, its surface glowing faintly as if filled with liquid sunlight. As she watched, he began to chant softly, his voice weaving together syllables that sounded both foreign and familiar. Suddenly, a streak of light shot down from the heavens, striking the vial with a soft ting. The captured starlight pulsed brightly before settling into a steady glow. Lila gasped, unable to contain her awe, and her father turned sharply, startled. When he saw her, his expression shifted from surprise to anger. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice sharp enough to cut through the stillness. "This is no place for you." "I wanted to understand," Lila replied, stepping closer despite the tension in his stance. "Why do you look so tired all the time? Why does this magic cost you so much?" Elias sighed, his shoulders sagging under some invisible weight. For a moment, he looked older than Lila had ever seen him. Then he knelt down, holding the glowing vial between them. "Do you see this?" he asked gently. "This isn't just light, it's life. To take a piece of the stars is to borrow a fragment of eternity, but nothing comes without balance. Each time I capture starlight, a little bit of me goes back up there." He tapped his chest. "My strength, my vitality, it's all part of the trade." Lila frowned, clutching her cloak tighter. "But why do it at all? Why risk yourself for lanterns?" Her father hesitated, then smiled sadly. "Because the world needs light, Lila. Not everyone can see the stars clearly. Some live in darkness, afraid of what hides in the shadows. My lanterns give them hope, even if only for a while." Determined now, Lila reached out and took the vial from his hands. It felt warm against her skin, almost alive. "Then let me help you," she said firmly. "You don't have to do this alone anymore." "No," Elias snapped, snatching the vial back. "It's too dangerous. You're my daughter. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for this." "But you've been sacrificing yourself for years!" Lila shot back, tears brimming in her eyes. "What kind of future will I have if I lose you completely?" They stared at each other, the silence heavy with unspoken fears. Finally, Elias relented, his gaze softening. "There might be another way," he admitted quietly. "A legend speaks of a Starweaver, a being who can weave starlight directly into objects without taking anything in return. But finding one," he shook his head. "It's impossible. Lila straightened, resolve hardening in her heart. Nothing's impossible. Tell me where to start. Over the next few weeks, Lila scoured every book in her father's workshop, searching for clues about the Starweaver. She learned that such beings were said to dwell in the Celestial Grove, a mythical forest hidden beyond the mortal realm. To reach it, she would need 3 things: a shard of moonstone, a feather from a phoenix, and a song sung by a silver wolf. Undeterred, Lila set off on her journey, leaving behind a note for her father promising she'd return. Her first stop was the moonlit caverns, where moonstones were rumoured to grow like flowers on the cave walls. The journey was perilous, requiring her to cross rivers swollen with rain and navigate paths slick with moss. Along the way, she encountered travellers who warned her of the dangers ahead, but she pressed on, driven by the image of her father's weary face. When she finally reached the caverns, she found them guarded by a massive stone golem, its body etched with runes that glowed faintly in the dim light. The creature challenged her, demanding proof of her worthiness. Thinking quickly, Lila recounted her mission and explained why she sought the moonstone, not for personal gain, but to save her father and others like him. Moved by her sincerity, the golem stepped aside, allowing her to enter. Inside, the cavern sparkled with countless moonstones, their surfaces reflecting the faint luminescence of bioluminescent fungi. Lila chose a particularly radiant shard, feeling its warmth pulse in her palm as she tucked it safely into her satchel. Next, she ventured into the ashen wastes, home to the elusive phoenix. There, she endured scorching heat and fierce winds until she encountered the magnificent bird itself. Instead of fighting it, she offered the moonstone as a gift, explaining her quest. Moved by her sincerity, the phoenix granted her a single feather. Finally, Lila travelled deep into the whispering woods, where silver wolves roamed. She spent nights listening to their haunting melodies, learning their language until she could mimic their songs perfectly. One fateful evening, she sang her plea to the pack leader, who nodded approvingly and allowed her to join their chorus. With all 3 items in hand, Lila performed the ritual described in her father's books. A portal opened before her, swirling with colours brighter than any star. Taking a deep breath, she stepped through. The Celestial Grove was unlike anything she'd ever imagined. Trees made of crystal stretched toward a sky filled with floating islands, and rivers of liquid light wound through the landscape. At the centre of it all stood the Starweaver, a figure cloaked in shimmering robes, their face obscured by a veil of stardust. "I seek your help," Lila said, bowing low. "My father has given too much of himself to bring light to others. Please, teach me your craft so I can save him." The Starweaver studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well, but remember, true light cannot exist without sacrifice. Are you prepared to bear that burden?" Lila thought of her father's weary smile, of the countless lives touched by his lanterns. "Yes," she whispered, "I am." For months, she trained under the Starweaver, learning to weave starlight into objects without losing a piece of herself. During this time, she discovered that the Starweaver was once human, a woman named Solara, who had sacrificed everything to become a guardian of celestial light. Through Solara's teachings, Lila gained not only skill, but wisdom, understanding that every act of creation carried a price, but that the right sacrifices could lead to greater good. When she finally returned to Emberwick, she carried with her a new lantern, one that shone brighter than any her father had ever made. Its light was pure and unwavering, capable of illuminating even the deepest darkness. Elias stared at it in wonder, tears streaming down his face. "You did it," he murmured. "You truly did it." From that day forward, Lila took over the family business, crafting lanterns that lit not only homes but hearts. And though her father eventually passed away, his legacy lived on, not just in the glow of her creations, but in the love and hope they shared with the world. Years later, when Lila had children of her own, she told them the story of her journey, passing down the knowledge of the Starweaver and the importance of balancing light and sacrifice. Under her guidance, Emberwick became a beacon of hope, its streets lined with lanterns that reminded everyone, even in the darkest times, there is always a way to shine.